There's a locked door in your mind. You can't see it, but it's there. And by the end of this story, you'll discover that this door was never locked from the outside. Mark was 43 years old when he finally understood. He'd prayed every day for over 20 years, fasting, tithing, vigils, unwavering faith, but his bank account remained empty. And worst of all, he thought it was his fault. Have you ever felt that? That gnawing contradiction? You have faith, you believe, but when you look around, when you see the bills piling up, when you see others prospering, a voice whispers in your ear, maybe I don't have enough faith. I know how that hurts, because it's not just about money. It's about feeling abandoned by the very God you trust. But today, you're going to discover something that will change everything, because Mark discovered it, and 2 million people around the world have already discovered it. What they discovered has nothing to do with a lack of faith. It has to do with a mental error so subtle, so invisible, that 95% of religious people make it without realizing. And the most shocking part? This error doesn't just block prosperity. It blocks all the miracles in your life. Let me tell you how Mark discovered this. It was an ordinary Tuesday. Mark was at work, a job he'd hated for years, earning just enough to survive. During lunch, he did what he always did. He prayed. He asked for an opportunity, for a change, for a financial miracle. But this time, something different happened. In the middle of his prayer, a question popped into his mind. A question he'd never asked before. Why do I always ask as if I don't deserve to receive? Stop for a moment. Feel the weight of that question. When you pray for prosperity, when you ask for an opportunity, what's the tone of your inner voice? Is it someone who knows they deserve it? Or is it someone begging for something they maybe shouldn't have? Mark realized he'd always prayed like a beggar, like someone asking for an undeserved favor. And in that moment, something clicked in his mind. He remembered a phrase he'd heard years before, but had never truly understood. Ask, and you shall receive. Not beg, and maybe you'll receive. Not prove you deserve it, and you'll receive. Simply, ask, and you shall receive. But here's the problem, and pay close attention now, because this will change your life. False humility is the silent killer of miracles. Let me explain what I mean by that. From a young age, especially if we grew up in religious families, we were taught that humility is a virtue. And it is. But there's a fundamental difference between genuine humility and false humility. Genuine humility is acknowledging that God is greater than you. False humility is believing that you don't deserve God's blessings. Genuine humility is gratitude for blessings received. False humility is rejecting blessings because you feel unworthy. And here's what 95% of people don't understand. When you reject prosperity out of humility, you're not being humble. You're doubting God's generosity. Think about it. If a loving father wants to give a gift to his son, and the son refuses because he doesn't deserve it, does that honor the father? Or does it hurt the father? Mark understood this that day, and for the first time in 20 years, he completely changed the way he prayed. Instead of saying, "Lord, if it's your will, please help me with money," he started saying, "Father, I receive the abundance you have prepared for me." Do you know what happened in less than 2 weeks? He received a job offer that would triple his salary, an offer that came out of nowhere, from a company that didn't even know he existed. Coincidence? Maybe you think so. But wait until you hear the rest of the story, because what happened next will give you goosebumps. 3 months later, Mark wasn't just earning 3 times more. He'd started a side business that generated more than his previous salary. In 6 months, he'd paid off all his debts. In a year, he'd bought his own home. But here's the most impressive part. And this is where you need to pay maximum attention. Mark didn't just change how he prayed for money. He changed how he received everything in life. And miracles started happening in every area. His daughter, who had been diagnosed with a chronic illness 2 years earlier, was completely healed. The doctors couldn't explain it. His wife, who had been distant for months, suddenly reconnected with him on a deep level. Broken relationships were restored. Opportunities appeared out of nowhere. It was as if he'd unlocked a hidden code in the universe. And the code was simple. Stop asking like a beggar. Start receiving like a child. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't about arrogance. This isn't about thinking you're better than others. This is about understanding your true, spiritual identity. When Jesus said, "Ask and you shall receive," he wasn't talking to strangers. He was talking to children of God. And children don't beg for an inheritance. Children receive an inheritance. Now, let me ask you a direct question. How many times have you rejected an opportunity, a gift, a blessing, because you thought you didn't deserve it? How many times have you sabotaged your own prosperity in the name of humility? If you're like most people, the answer is many times. And here's the painful truth that no one tells you. Every time you do that, you're not being humble. You're being proud, because you're placing your judgment of yourself above God's judgment of you. Think about it. If God, who knows every mistake you've ever made, every sin you've ever committed, still wants to bless you, who are you to disagree? That's what I call reverse pride. It's when you think you're so bad that not even God can fully forgive you, so unworthy that not even grace can fully reach you. And this reverse pride is one of the most destructive forces in the lives of people of faith, because it doesn't just block material prosperity. It blocks healing. It blocks relationships. It blocks dreams. It blocks purpose. It's like you have a locked door between you and all the blessings God has prepared for your life. And the key to that door is in your hand. It always has been. But you've never used it because you thought you didn't deserve to open that door. Mark discovered this, and since then, he's taught this truth to thousands of people around the world. People who were trapped in the same cycle of genuine faith and blocked results. And they all discovered the same thing. The problem was never a lack of faith. The problem was always a lack of reception. Now you might be thinking, but isn't that selfish? Focusing so much on receiving? And here's a truth that will shock you. God wants you to prosper more than you want to prosper. Does that sound absurd? Let me explain. When you're prosperous, happy, fulfilled, you become a more efficient channel of God's love in the world. You help more people. You impact more lives. You spread more love. When you're broken, depressed, frustrated, even with all the faith in the world, your ability to serve becomes limited. Not because God needs your money, but because you need to be whole to serve fully. A cracked cup can't hold water. A broken person can't pour out abundance. So, when you refuse to receive God's blessings, you're not just hurting yourself. You're hurting all the people who could be impacted through you. It's selfishness disguised as humility. Mark understood this, and that's why his transformation was so radical and so fast. But here's what I want you to understand. Mark's story isn't special because he's special. It's special because the truth he discovered is universal. That same locked door that existed in Mark's mind exists in your mind too. And the same key that unlocked his life can unlock yours. But before I teach you exactly how to use that key, I need you to understand why this mistake is so common among people of faith. The answer will surprise you. Since the early centuries of Christianity, there's been a subtle, yet devastating distortion of the original message. A distortion that confused humility with self-sabotage, poverty with holiness, suffering with purification. And this distortion created generations of sincerely devout people, but unconsciously programmed to reject abundance. It's like you have a mental virus. A virus that makes you automatically reject anything good that tries to enter your life. And the cruelest part? This virus disguises itself as virtue. So you don't even realize it's there, silently sabotaging every opportunity, every blessing, every miracle. Mark was infected by this virus for over 20 years, and you might be too. But here's the good news. This virus can be removed, completely. And when that happens, the transformation is instantaneous. Let me tell you about Emily. Emily was a 60-year-old widow who survived on a minimal retirement pension. She had dedicated her entire life to religious service, volunteer work at the church, caring for the elderly, helping those in need. But she herself lived in constant need. For years, she accepted this as God's will. She thought her poverty was a way of identifying with Jesus, who was also poor, until the day someone asked her a simple, yet powerful question. Was Jesus poor, or did Jesus choose to live simply? That question changed everything for Emily. She began to study Jesus' life more deeply, and she discovered something that had gone unnoticed her entire life. Jesus wasn't poor out of limitation. Jesus was poor by conscious choice during a specific period of his ministry. But during his 3 years of ministry, he never lacked. He had a team of financial support, prosperous women who funded the ministry. He ate in the homes of wealthy people. He had a treasurer on his team. And even more impressive, when he needed something, financial miracles happened. Fish with coins in their mouths, the multiplication of loaves, turning water into wine. Jesus wasn't bound by poverty. He used simplicity as a tool when necessary. Emily realized she had confused simplicity with poverty, choice with limitation, detachment with lack, and the moment she understood this, something shifted in her mind. She began to pray differently. Instead of passively accepting her financial situation, she began to ask, "Father, how do you want me to use the abundance that's coming?" Do you know what happened? In 3 weeks, a distant relative she didn't even know existed died and left her a significant inheritance. In 2 months, she discovered she was entitled to a pension she had never claimed. In 6 months, she had tripled her income without leaving home. But the most incredible thing happened after that. With financial stability, Emily was able to drastically expand her social work. She created an organization that now feeds hundreds of families a month. She opened a home for abandoned elderly people. She funds scholarships for underprivileged youth. She realized that God didn't want her to be poor to be holy. God wanted her to be prosperous, so she could serve more. And here's the lesson I want you to engrave in your heart. God doesn't bless you, so you can be selfish. God blesses you so you can be a channel of blessings. But you can't give what you don't have. You can't pour from an empty cup. So, when you block your own prosperity in the name of humility, you're not just hurting yourself. You're limiting the impact God wants to have through you in the world. That changes everything, doesn't it? Now you understand why the door was locked. Not because God didn't want to bless you, but because you had been programmed to lock that door from the inside. And the key to opening that door is simple but revolutionary. Stop asking permission to be blessed. Start giving permission for God to bless you. Feel the difference? When you ask permission, you're assuming the default answer is no. When you give permission, you're aligning with God's will, which has always been yes. Mark did this. Emily did this. Thousands of people around the world have done this. And they all discovered the same transformative truth. You don't need to beg for what is already yours by spiritual right. But I know what you're thinking now. How do I do this in practice? How do I change 20, 30, 40 years of mental conditioning? And that's exactly what I'm going to teach you now. Because there's a specific method, a mental protocol that deactivates this self-sabotage virus and activates the blessing receptor that has always existed within you. Mark discovered this method by accident, but then he turned it into a system that anyone can use. And in the next few words, you'll learn exactly how to apply this system to your life. But first, I need to warn you about something important. When you start applying this, two things will happen immediately. First, opportunities will start appearing in your life in a coincidental way. Job offers, business ideas, unexpected invitations, right people, right time. Second, your mind will try to sabotage these opportunities. It will whisper, "This is too good to be true. You don't deserve this. There must be a catch." And here is the ultimate test of your faith. Will you trust your programmed mind or God's promise? Because the programmed mind will always try to keep you in the comfort zone of lack, even if that comfort zone is actually a zone of constant discomfort. Mark almost failed this test. When the job offer arrived, his first reaction was to think, "They must have made a mistake. When they discover who I really am, they'll withdraw the offer." But then he remembered the discovery he had made. He remembered the door he had decided to open. And instead of sabotaging the opportunity, he did something revolutionary. He said, "Thank you," before he even knew if he would be definitively accepted. He acted like someone who expected to be blessed, not like someone who expected to be rejected. And that changed everything. Because here's a profound spiritual truth that few understand. Anticipatory gratitude is the master key to all miracles. When you give thanks before you receive, you are demonstrating real faith, not theoretical faith, practical faith. And the universe responds to practical faith instantaneously. It's as if you're tuning your mental frequency to the same frequency as God's abundance. And when that happens, miracles become natural, not extraordinary. Natural. Mark discovered that when he operated on that frequency, everything flowed. When he stepped out of that frequency, everything stalled. It was like he had found the secret code to reality. And now, you also have access to this code. But let me tell you another story before teaching the complete protocol, because this story will show the real transformative power of this discovery. John was a pastor of a small church in the countryside. He dedicated 60 hours a week to the ministry, but received only a token stipend. His family lived on sporadic donations and the faith that God would provide. But the provision always came at the last minute, and it was always the bare minimum necessary to survive. John thought this was normal. He thought this was how God tested his faith, until the day he had a disturbing revelation. He realized he was more proud of his poverty than grateful for blessings. He used his financial difficulties as a kind of spiritual medal. See how dedicated I am. See how much I sacrifice for God. But then he asked himself a devastating question. Is my poverty helping or hindering God's kingdom? And the answer was clear. His church couldn't grow because it lacked resources to expand. He couldn't help needy members because he himself was in need. He couldn't fully dedicate himself to the ministry because he needed to work at other things to supplement his income. John realized his holiness was limiting his effectiveness. And at that moment, he made a radical decision. He decided to pray not only for the church, but for his personal prosperity, not as an end in itself, but as a means to a greater end. He changed his prayer from, "Lord, give me enough to survive," to, "Father, prosper me so that I may prosper your kingdom." Do you know what happened? In 3 months, he received an offer to write a book about his ministerial experience. The book became a national bestseller. Within a year, he had founded an organization that now trains pastors across the country. His church grew from 50 to 1,500 members in 2 years. He opened 3 branch churches. He created a social assistance program that serves 5,000 families a month, all because he understood a revolutionary truth. God doesn't make you poor to keep you holy. God makes you prosperous to make you effective. And that is the key you need to turn in your mind today. Stop seeing prosperity as an obstacle to spirituality. Start seeing prosperity as a tool of spirituality. Stop apologizing for wanting to be blessed. Start apologizing for not having allowed God to bless you sooner. Because here is the final truth I want you to understand. You are not competing with God for abundance. You are collaborating with God for abundance. And that collaboration begins the moment you stop asking and start receiving. Now, let me teach you the exact protocol that Mark, Mary, John, and thousands of other people used to unlock this mental door. I call it the 3R protocol. Recognize, reprogram, and receive. First R, recognize. You need to specifically identify how the self-sabotage virus operates in your mind. And it operates through automatic phrases that you repeat without realizing it. Phrases like, I'm not worthy of this. If God wills it, it will happen. I don't want to be greedy. There are people who need it more than I do. Maybe it's not the right time. Each of these phrases seems innocent. They even seem spiritual. But in reality, they are programs that cancel your blessings before they even arrive. Mark discovered that he repeated the phrase, if it's your will, more than 50 times a day. But he used it as a way to protect himself from disappointment, not as a way to align himself with God. It was as if he were saying, God, I want this. But if it doesn't happen, at least I won't be too frustrated because I'm already expecting no. Do you do that too? Mary discovered that her phrase was, I don't need much, Lord. But in her mind, not much meant almost nothing. She had programmed her own limitation. John repeated, I am here to serve, not to be served. But he used this as an excuse not to receive, as if receiving and serving were incompatible. So the first step is brutally honest with yourself. What is the phrase you repeat most often when it comes to prosperity? What is the mental programming that is canceling your blessings? Stop now. Think about it. Because until you recognize this programming, it will continue operating on autopilot. Recognized? Great. Now let's move on to the second R. Second R, reprogram. Here's where the magic really happens. Because it's not enough to identify the limiting programming. You need to replace it with expansive programming. But it's not just any replacement. It has to be a replacement that your mind believes. Because if you try to jump from, I don't deserve anything, to, I deserve everything, your mind will reject the new programming. It's like trying to shift from first gear directly to fifth gear. The car will stall. So, Mark developed what he calls a mental bridge. Instead of radically changing his phrasing, he created an intermediary version that his mind could accept. Instead of, if it be your will, he started saying, Father, I trust in your good will for me. Feel the difference? The first phrase is defensive. The second is receptive. Mary shifted from, I don't need much, to, Father, I receive all that the Lord has for me. John changed from, I am here to serve, to, Father, prosper me, so that I may serve more. And here's the secret. Each new programming must contain 3 elements. 1. Acknowledgement of God's fatherhood. Father, instead of Lord. 2. A posture of reception. I receive, instead of give me. 3. A higher purpose, so that I may, instead of for myself. When you program your mind with these 3 elements, something powerful happens. Your mind stops resisting prosperity and starts looking for it. It's like changing the settings on your mental GPS. Instead of searching for paths to lack, it begins searching for paths to abundance. But here's what you need to understand. This reprogramming doesn't happen overnight. It's a 21-day process. Why 21 days? Because that's the time it takes for the brain to form new neural pathways. Less than that, and the old programming kicks back in. Mark did this religiously for 21 days. Every morning, upon waking, he repeated his new programming 50 times. Every night, before bed, another 50 times. And on the 21st day, something extraordinary happened. He woke up, and for the first time in years, his first reaction wasn't anxiety about money. It was gratitude for the abundance that was coming. He hadn't seen the abundance yet, but he felt it arriving. And 3 days later, the phone rang with a job offer. Coincidence? Absolutely not. The reprogrammed mind began to attract opportunities that the old mind rejected. Now let's move to the third R, the most powerful of all. Third R, receiving. This is the moment that separates those who transform their lives from those who only dream of transformation. Because it's one thing to reprogram the mind. It's another thing to act according to the new programming when the opportunity arises. And here's where 90% of people fail. The opportunity arrives. The door opens. But at the last minute, they back down. Because the old mind whispers, "This is too good to be true." Mark almost made this mistake. When the job offer arrived, his first impulse was to find reasons to refuse. The salary is too high. There must be a catch. They'll find out I'm not qualified. But then he remembered the protocol, and he did something revolutionary. Instead of analyzing the opportunity with the old mind, he analyzed it with the new mind. And the new mind said, "Father, thank you for the abundance you have prepared for me." He said yes before he even fully understood what was happening. And here's the key. When you operate at the frequency of reception, you don't need to understand everything. You just need to trust and receive. Mary did the same thing when she discovered the inheritance. Her first reaction was to think, "This must be a mistake. I didn't even know this relative." But instead of investigating to find reasons to refuse, she said, "Father, thank you for surprising me with your provision. John did this when he received the offer to write the book. I'm not a writer," was his first thought, but he shifted to, "Father, use me as you will." And in all cases, when they chose to receive instead of resist, the miracles multiplied. Because here's a spiritual law that few know. Received blessing attracts more blessing. It's as if the universe is constantly testing your capacity to receive. And when you pass the test, it raises the level of the blessing. Mark discovered this when, 2 months after the new job, he received a proposal for a partnership in a business. This time, he didn't even hesitate. He said yes, immediately. Mary discovered this when, after the inheritance, she began receiving invitations to paid lectures about her faith experience. Each yes opened bigger doors, John discovered. This when, after the book, he began receiving invitations to international conferences. Each reception amplified his influence. It's as if they had entered an upward spiral of abundance. But here's what you need to understand. This spiral isn't automatic. It's a choice. With each new opportunity, you have to consciously choose to operate at the frequency of reception instead of the frequency of resistance. And the more you choose to receive, the easier it becomes to receive. It's like exercising a muscle. In the beginning, it's difficult, but over time, it becomes natural. Mark today receives extraordinary opportunities, weekly. And he says the hardest part isn't getting the opportunities. It's remembering how difficult it was before. Because when you operate at the correct frequency for long enough, miracles become normal. Abundance becomes expected. Prosperity becomes natural. And then you understand something profound. You weren't praying to a God who didn't want to bless you. You were praying with a mind that didn't know how to receive blessings. The change wasn't in God. The change was in you. And now that you know this, let me tell you about the multiplying power of this discovery. Because when you begin to operate at this new frequency, something interesting happens to the people around you. They begin to ask, "What changed in you?" And when you tell them, some of them make the same discovery. And then they begin to prosper too. It's as if you've become a transmitter of abundance, not just a receiver. Mark today has a group of over 500 men who apply the same protocol. 70% of them have seen significant transformations in less than 6 months. Mary created a ministry for women where she teaches the protocol. Over 1,000 women have gone through the program. 80% report dramatic changes in their financial and family lives. John incorporated these teachings into his pastoral ministry. His church became nationally known as the Church of Conscious Prosperity, not because they preach greed, but because they teach reception. And here's what's most beautiful about all of this. The more people learn to receive, the more abundance there is for everyone. Because abundance isn't a limited resource that needs to be fought over. Abundance is an infinite resource that multiplies when it's shared. It's as if God has been waiting for a humanity that knows how to receive, to pour out everything He's always wanted to give. And maybe today is the day you become part of that receptive humanity. But let me warn you about something that's going to happen in the next few days. Your old mind will try to convince you that all of this is fantasy. It will bring evidence of why this can't work for you, specifically. You're not like Mark, Mary, and John. Your situation is different. This works for others, but not for you. And here is the ultimate test of your faith. Will you believe in your scarcity-programmed mind or in God's abundance-programmed promise? Because I can guarantee you one thing. If you apply the 3R protocol exactly as I taught for 21 consecutive days, your life will change. Not because I have the power to change your life, but because you will finally give permission for God to change your life. And He's been waiting for that permission for a very long time. So now I want you to do something with me. Take a deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs. And as you exhale, I want you to release all the old programming that has been holding you back. Release the belief that you don't deserve. Release the fear of being greedy. Release the idea that poverty is holiness. Release the need to suffer to be worthy. Release it all now. And in the space that has opened up, I want you to place a new truth. You are a beloved child of a Father who wants to bless you more than you can imagine. You have divine permission to prosper. You have heavenly authorization to be abundant. You have the spiritual right to live the extraordinary life that has been prepared for you since before your birth. And from this moment on, you will operate in this truth. Not because you deserve more than others, but because you finally understood that deserving was never the issue. The issue has always been receiving, and now you know how to receive. Know what the most incredible part of all this is? A year from now, you'll be telling your own transformation story to someone who is exactly where you were today. Someone who has faith, but feels trapped. Someone who prays, but the results don't come. Someone who loves God, but doesn't understand why life is so difficult. And you'll be able to tell that person exactly what I'm telling you now. There's a locked door in your mind. You can't see it, but it's there. And this door was never locked from the outside. The key has always been in your hands. You just needed to learn how to use it. And today you learned. Welcome to the life of abundance that has always been rightfully yours. The journey is only just beginning. And on the other side of that door, you're about to open, there's a version of you that you can barely imagine. A prosperous version. Fulfilled, impactful, free. That version is waiting for you. And it always has been. Now all you have to do is open the door and find it. The key is in your hand. Use it.